All right, we're good now. I'm now at 3 seconds in.
We're
There was
good.
5. There were 3 or 4 seconds there where I was juggling, but don't
Yes, but you
pay
weren't
no
just-
attention. Pay no-
But you know, it takes a lot of skill to try to juggle one ball.
Yeah, well.
It's
The technology eluded me. I had to decide at the last minute.
Technology deluded you.
One of them already exists on your desktop. Do you want to replace it, or do you want to keep both? And I was thinking, what do I want?
What?
You know what I did? As a selfish scientist, I decided to keep
I
both.
want them both.
I kept both.
I want it all.
I kept both. All right.
You're just such a politician.
We're coming in for a landing. It's all good. It's all good. Here, listen.
Here we come.
There has been kind of a shortage of maracas players, as you've noticed.
There's always a shortage of maracas players,
I just
and
hit
I'm not
stop.
sure exactly
Okay,
what
there
the
we go.
reason for that is.
Well, it's anyway. Hey, listen. Good morning, Robert Strong.
Good morning, Richard Pollack.
And welcome to today. Robert, besides Radio Science News, I'm so excited. It's the start of Infrastructure Week.
Yes, it started the Infrastructure
feel
Week.
so good.
As of last night at about 11:20, it
boy.
started in Infrastructure Week. So I imagine that any moment now the large cranes will start to pull up in
Well,
front and will air up the road.
They
Well,
will.
wait a minute. Somebody's already tearing up.
Well, that's
all of
that
the
happens
roads.
here a lot.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I am
The
just
pothole
excited.
capital of the world.
And
Wheeling,
you know
West
what?
Virginia.
The only thing I am going to say is because you know, and I see. I think one of the big messages from the people who recognize that this is sort of Infrastructure Week is that everybody really wants infrastructure.
Of course.
And people have talked
Roads,
about it.
bridges, internet.
And the only thing that I'm going to say is, you know, people like to count, who did the most and who. And I am going to say that, and I hope they don't take this as a criticism, but apparently I was making notes this morning that we're having Infrastructure Week, but Biden is only having one Infrastructure Week, and apparently I think Donald Trump had 12 or 16 Infrastructure Weeks. So
I don't know I'm
so
not
on a
sure about that.
numerical scale, I'm going to say he had more Infrastructure Weeks.
Yes, he did.
But apparently we're doing something with this one, so I'm happy. So.
Good.
And I did hear one quote, and I want to say this is from somebody in Michigan. I want to advise, I was talking to my son about, he's talking about, well, what's going to happen with the stock market? And I did tell him that I thought that the futures for the, because you know, people watch silver and gold and copper, but I think that there's going to be a huge glut of lead hitting the market because a guy, one of the senators from Michigan was saying, well, he was excited because he actually is from Flint, Michigan. And for 4 years, for some reason, they never got around to removing all
taking
the
the lead out,
pipes.
yeah.
So as my dad used to say to me, hey, get the lead out.
It's about
This
time.
particular politician, and I don't even know if he was a Democrat or a Republican, because his point was, I think I said this once already, infrastructure is something that everybody kind of supports.
Everybody, doesn't matter if
And
you're
so,
blue
you know, on Radio
or
Science
green
News,
or red or
well, Radio
yeah.
Science News, you and I are always looking at special material sciences and how that can affect people and their stock market and all that. And I told my son, I said, you better sell short on the because I think the price of lead will plummet, pun intended, and because there's going to be a glut of when they're going to replace all across, not just Michigan, not just Flint, Michigan,
Yeah.
but all across the country. One of the first things that will happen is, you know, and this is probably going to create a labor shortage because they're going to rehire all kinds of plumbers and people and folks to remove the lead
Right.
and then replace it with clean systems for delivering clean water to our children and elders and our pets.
Great
and everybody.
idea. Wonderful idea.
I think this was, I'm going to say, a long time coming and
the,
good news.
the only problem is 1.2 trillion. That's just going to take care of what's needed in Wheeling.
No.
I mean-
I know you're thinking that, you know, we made a
Bridges
special
and roads
deal.
and-
Being West Virginians, we're going to get special treatment, but
Oh
we're
well,
not. We're not.
of course we are.
We're going to have evenly distributed. I'm going to say good things happening,
I certainly hope so.
that's why I'm going to celebrate Infrastructure Week. I'm excited about
Good.
it.
Hey,
And
bring out the parade, right?
give us the data on what's happening with
Certainly.
Radio Science News this morning.
So, you folks, as Richard just said, are listening to Radio Science News. This is episode number 811. If you're into prime numbers, you'll remember that
Bingo.
2 weeks ago in episode 809, that was also a prime number. This is also a prime number at 811. They are twin primes. This is November 6th, 2021. the first day of Infrastructure Week.
Well, and
So-
I think that having a prime number Radio Science News episode just puts the
Obviously-
icing on the cake. For me.
Obviously, that must be what's going on.
All right, now
It's obvious to all observers.
Now, Robert, I know that the folks can get to Radio Science News. I like it by going to the Smart Center
I do too.
and linking there because that makes you. It's like stopping at a wonderful rest stop on your way
Yeah,
to your
and
location.
you go, oh, I really needed to go.
enjoyed it.
But-
I really enjoyed being here. So go to smartcenter.org
so
first.
if you go to www.smartcenter.org,
Yeah.
if you're in an Uber, you're good. If you're in a
Self-driving electric vehicle.
vehicle, good for you. Glad that you can afford that. But you should really put your hands on the wheel or pull over.
Put your
so
hands
you don't
on
do
the
that.
wheel, keep
So
your
if you're
hands
on
on
Radio Science News, if you're on smartcenter.org, you'll see just above the little trifecta T-shirt rainbows there.
Those are made in America too.
They
by
are
the way.
made in America. The words Radio Science News, that is a link. Click on that, and that will take you to
the
the
launch.
launch pad of science. And I just want to say there's some really cool stuff here. There's the Rossi blog, the Medical Express, the Space Station, the Phys.org, the Space Calendar, science blogs.
So
There's
much.
great stuff here. And I also want to say that most of the links that go back to, and I'm going to scroll all
Back to the first
down.
infrastructure
Back
week.
to the first infrastructure. Back to April the 15th, 2006. Some of these links are still in a viable sense.
And we're not in charge of all of them.
No,
a lot
no.
of them are still there. It's kind of an historic presentation.
And I just want to say that what's really nice about these links is that they have been previewed by us, so that if you want to use them for educational purposes, unless somebody's gone in and hacked into them, these are really good, safe kid links.
Yeah, they're.
And I just want to
It's
mention that.
kind of an archive of stuff that we've talked about. And
Yeah.
I agree. I went back, and occasionally you'll find one that's not
Gone,
there,
sure.
which is appropriate because why should the internet be glutted up with a bunch of stuff that has been, it's nice to see it in place, a place and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
time, and how people
Yeah.
thought. But Robert, we've got to get
We
November
do.
6th. There's so many.
We do. There's so much stuff. We've got the Pfizer pill.
The Pfizer pill, the Merck pill, stocks. Oh, well, there's
Stocks.
something about stocks. We've got ECAT SK. We have a December 9th demo. We have a research. These are all about something that's we're going to
Yeah.
be looking at 1 month from like a couple days into infrastructure week because it's
I'm
actually
really
December
excited.
9th.
Then we've got ice melt. Oh, we've got wildfires, ice melt, troposphere,
Those are all kind of like climate things.
webs.
Yeah, and these are kind of like I did think on webs, then I thought, oh, what about that James Webb Space? And I saw
Yeah.
a cool article about space telescopes.
Scopes.
And
Fungus.
then though, the worst story of all this week is about fungus. I just feel so bad about this because it shows me the level to which a fungus will go to be cruel. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Now we have some medical things. TT10,
Okay.
C. difficile.
C difficile.
A little bit of French, when we're talking about biology and little creatures that we have to worry about.
French biology.
A story about it. It's kind of a breakthrough in transplant, but it's a weird. But I'll tell you what. Before I'm going to say that there are a couple stories that we're probably not going to talk a lot about because there's so much in the news and everybody is probably already happy about them or unhappy about them. Now, the first one that I think we're probably not going to talk too much about is the child vaccinations.
Right.
That is great, huge, fabulous
It's
news.
unbelievable news.
And it's all over the place, and most folks will know about it. The other one that I just saw a thing pop up on my very helpful computer, the one that always helps me, like, do you want to do this, or that? I just go,
Are you sure that you want to do that?
I know you thought you wanted to do this, but what about, well, I saw a thing pop up to say, hey, don't forget that this Sunday, tomorrow, is when we have to think about daylight
Ugh.
savings time changing.
Oh God, just
I
makes
can't
me
remember
ill,
whether we're saving it or
ill
losing
to
it.
my stomach. I don't know. Save it, lose it, toss it. I don't care.
Well, but here's what I'm going to say. I'm only going to say one thing: spring forward, fall back. That's all I'm going to say. Set your clocks, and then
That's fine.
Robert and I have often we could rail on for a lot of daylight.
for days.
We could probably lose all the time that
Lose
was saved.
the entire hour.
that was
just
saved. by the fact that, we really observe nature. I observe
Yes.
when the sun rises, when it sets, and I notice when the planets change in their position and different.
It's awesome.
And it's nice to do that, but that's all confused by the fact that at some point in the spring and some point in the fall, people
You have to
Switch
change
back
your
a whole
clocks, and being that we are slaves to our time,
yeah,
that then
I'm a time
interrupts.
slave.
Yes, that then interrupts how
Oh.
we interact with the natural progression of the world around us.
Well, don't even get me
and we
started.
lose touch with what's going on.
And I'm not
And
even-
it irritates me. Don't get me started
Wait, but
on
you
this.
already are
we
started.
have to toss out. Oh, here I go.
There you
And
go. Stop.
a wife is waving, going, "No, don't go there."
Don't go to. Listen, wait, let me stop you because I'm going to say one more thing. That as a sciencey person,
Yes.
I have actually been aware that there is a thing such as circadian rhythms.
There are circadian
And
rhythms.
if you are a school teacher, you've
Oh,
observed how things change.
I was a school teacher. You were a school
There you
teacher.
go.
Lee
Your
was a school
students, and they're
teacher.
like, "I'm asleep."
Oh, don't
Yeah.
want to go
I
to
think-
school on the Monday after a time change.
Well, it's
Oh,
well,
it's just awful.
I think the bottom line from my perspective is it's an unnecessary thing to do.
Completely unnecessary.
The things that have to be done because of those weird little changes. Anyway, so I lied though because I said we weren't going to talk about
One more
it.
thing.
Oh no!
The reason that we do this is that Benjamin Franklin
Yeah.
was irate about the French staying up all night and burning candles, and he did some big mathematical thing
Ooh,
about the
the
amount
candle
of
lobby.
wax burned and wasted.
He waxed eloquent.
And so, yes, he did. And so he said, what if we just change the time so that the French didn't have to burn as many candles? And you're going, and we're still stuck with this?
Well,
That's ridiculous.
at least we can blame the
Let's
French for
get
one
at
more
least
thing.
into the 18th century, people. Okay,
you
that's
feel better?
all I'm going to say. But one more. No.
Well, no. Okay, that's too much. Anyway, let me get back. When I was talking about the thing that I was going to say about replacing all that lead, and I told my son,
Yes.
this particular politician came on, and I wrote this phrase down because this is what I'm starting to hear everywhere. He felt that, if nothing else, he said, it was so nice to hear, and this is what he said: thoughtful adult leadership at the federal level.
The what? I don't think I've ever heard those words
Thoughtful adult leadership.
in the same phrase.
Well, anyway.
Thoughtful adult leadership at the federal level.
A politician, and
I
some
think
ilk,
that's
and I don't
pretty
know.
funny.
I don't even know which side the guy was from, but he was either a congressman or a senator. I just caught the last part of it as he was saying, "I'm from Flint, Michigan."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "I've been waiting for 4 years because everybody remembers
to-
the ancient
to
Flint,
fix this.
Michigan thing." And he
Yep.
said, my grandchildren and the children. Now, the other guy that came on, because Robert, you and I are big into sports a lot.
Oh,
Like we're always out there.
yeah.
We're always out there fishing. We're out there. Got our
Tossing the
barbless,
football.
got our barbless hooks in our
That's
our
true.
catch and release
The
fishing.
barbless hooks, yep.
So a guy comes on, and he's from a company. I think the company might be called Fishco. He's smart enough to have websites and all that. So they're talking to him about, because they want to. Boy, their whole thing is, those supply chains. The Biden supply chain issue problems. He makes most of his fishing lures and stuff, which are for American fish, of course, are made in China. He goes through a whole thing of showing all his products. Like he has a whole program. Merry Fishmas is one of his things.
Merry Fishmas.
And so he he even has fishing advent calendars. Because many people link the coming of Jesus Christ with fish,
Sure.
and all
Yep,
that.
yep.
He was a fisher of men.
Okay,
He went
I
through.
can see that.
He went through and explained the issue of how supply chains are. That it's manufactured in China, then it goes somewhere to a shipping port, then it comes across, and then it has to go to a shipping port here. Has to
and
be
then it has to be
unloaded.
unloaded.
Then it has to be distributed to warehouses
by
trucks.
Big trucks.
Now the main thing is that he said when it's distributed to the warehouses, he has multiple customers, including big box Walmarts and other. Then it has to be set up for all this. So he was indicating when there are this many steps, well, you can expect there's going to be problems. But the bottom line was, he said, oh, but our products are going to be in the stores. So he was talking about how bad it was and why it was bad. But the bottom line being that they're going to make it. So you can
But
get your
we're outside of all that.
you
Yeah.
can get your Fishco stuff in the
Fishco.
store.
Thank you,
But
Zach.
the shipping costs have gone way up.
Well, somebody's going to make out, and that's
Well,
hopefully.
telescope
it-
prices have gone.
Oh,
way
yeah,
up
yeah, they've-
because the shipping costs have gone.
Well, and again, those probably, I'm gonna tacitly I'm gonna sort of agree that there are like supply and demand issues. Whether they're real supply and
Oh.
demand, that's another thing. I can't state that.
So
some things are real.
So you're saying that this might be like the oil a price
Uh,
fluctuation.
Oh yeah, you mean that there is one? Yes, yes, there. And the timing of it, we're not going to get into that, Robert. That would be worse than daylight savings time. I'm only going to say that.
That's true. That would be worse than daylight savings
I'm
time.
gonna say
I
that-
didn't know that there was anything worse than daylight savings time, but that might be worse.
Okay, the other two kind of sciencey stories that I looked at. Well, one of them was, I thought this was unique. That apparently, I saw that the NRA was is being. It turns out that there were like $35 million in illegal campaign finances that came from this little scheme by the NRA during the 2016 election, and big numbers. When I had numbers, I thought you'd be interested. 35 million, and all, but the part that made perfect sense to me was it said that the NRA used shell companies for their illegal.
Shell
I
companies.
said, what would you expect them to use, right?
Right.
Okay. Now the other part is, I know that I'm probably, as you are, Robert, just so excited about Infrastructure Week that I find myself
I
thinking.
could barely sleep.
Well, what I find myself thinking is, there are so many situations that we look at, and even if we're analyzing them like critically with numbers and charts and math and all that stuff, that it's like, are you looking at it? And somebody said it this morning. Well, you got to quit looking at it as a half empty. It's the glass is half full. And I thought, well, that's really important. And at the time they were kind of talking about this, they were making a point about, Biden's supply chain issues, like they're his problems. And they showed a picture, and you'll get this. They showed a picture of San Pedro Harbor. And I know, Robert, you and I like to fish there a lot at San Pedro
we
Harbor.
constantly go there.
So,
yes.
so the point
our
was,
jaunts.
when we look out, when we're casting into the surf, we look out and we see container ships
After container ship
lined up.
to the horizon.
And of course, now I'm going to say I would go, oh, this is terrible, and but you would probably look at me and you would say, well, I'm going to take you out of the equation because I always think of my father-in-law's great statement about certain things, like you would go to a restaurant, and the restaurant had been struggling, like maybe because of COVID or something, and the restaurant is open, and they're going, oh my gosh, we're in real trouble. And, and it'd be like, well, what's the trouble? He'd go, look at all these people that want to
Standing in
come to
line.
my restaurant.
Right.
They want to come to my restaurant. That means I've got to make sure I've got to order more eggs. I've got to get the chickens on, I've got to get more bacon.
Have more servers and more chefs.
I've
and-
got supply chain issues. I'm going to have to hire more people and pay them maybe a little bit more money, and then they're going to have money for Christmas. I'm thinking, okay, yeah. So what's your point? And he would say, "What a great problem to have."
What a nice problem to
So,
have. Yes.
relative to San Pedro Harbor, I'm going to say, as the guy from Fishco pointed out, they said, "Well, what is it you're going to have to do?" And he said, "Well, we probably should hire more people to unload the ships. We should probably hire more people in our warehouses to package and quickly get them out to Walmart and Target. We should probably hire more truck drivers." He said, this is going to be such a big mess because we're going to have to hire and pay people and put money in their pockets. And
Oh no, not that.
well, anyway, so let's talk about the Pfizer pill.
Let's do that. I think this. I just want to say before we talk about the Pfizer pill, let's make sure that we understand the pill is not a substitute
No.
for the vaccination.
A tool
It
in
is
your
a
workshop.
tool after you catch COVID,
Yeah.
not before.
Well,
It's
basically-
not a substitute for the vaccination.
Now, the thing that it probably is, because somebody pointed out, they said, we didn't even talk, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I've changed my chart. I've been using my chart to cover nothing but the kind of the COVID issue.
Right.
In fact, I'll tell you what. Since we are so, Robert, we're so like
We're
on
flexible.
the fly here, and flexible, as the French would say.
Flexible?
I'm going to go to the chart. And this
All
is
right,
here's
to
a
the
little
chart.
chart, and you like charts, right?
I love charts. Ooh, cumulative change in jobs since before the pandemic.
Right. So everybody would say, "Wow, I've heard a lot of people say, "Well, man, greatest economy in the universe, was occurring right before the pandemic." Right.
Blah, blah, blah.
Okay. And I'm not even going to argue with that, because I'm just going to say, well, here's the chart.
Here's the chart.
The chart shows that, okay, and if you go back, you can see where the beginning of the pandemic was, and then they're basically taking April when jobs hit the bottom.
Yeah.
And their point is, okay, April, June, that's so, September, January, things were kind of coming back. But anyway, basically they're showing that we're still down 4.2 million jobs since February of 2020, which can be considered like when the pandemic, started, had some real problems, right? Now the weird thing was
That's
the
essentially a straight line since January
Well, it's-
2021 to the present. It's not quite a straight line, but it's
No,
an
it's-
upward slope of
so you-
pretty close to a straight
You're
line.
kind of looking like things might be going heading in the right direction.
Yes.
I don't like the theory that things are heading in the wrong direction. I'm going to
No,
say
they
this
are
chart
not.
supports. Now, the big thing was we're only supposed to get 400,000 some jobs in October. And not only did we get actually a big boost, 531, a lot of them were in things like people traveling and vacationing,
Yeah, isn't that
meaning
nice?
getting back. But it turns out that they had to revise the past two to show that things actually were better since it. But anyway, the point is that since April of 2020, that we are actually up 18.2 million jobs, and I'm going to say the trend looks good. Okay,
It does.
So
it looks really good.
and I'm not even going to spend any time discussing who or what or anything. I'm just saying that's what it is.
I
Now,
don't care who or what.
Well, I
just
never have.
I want it fixed.
it's like the infrastructure, and I did mention that we're celebrating infrastructure week.
Yes, I did. You did.
So right now, the things that are happening are, okay, you have this job report that shows that the economy actually seems to be doing better. You have all the people have explained the reason why all the bottlenecks and ships and things make so much difference is that everybody is getting back to it.
Right.
And that means that people
All
are
at the same time.
people in other countries are, man, it's just like my father-in-law's restaurant thing. Well, all of a sudden, everybody's decided there's a football game today and they want to come to your restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my, we have a problem. Well, it's a good problem because you're going to feed people and make money and maybe hire more people. The other two things that are kind of astonishing are that they came out talking about how so many more people were vaccinated. Even the places where they were worried, I think maybe New York, the firefighters in New York or someplace, where it turns out that they're basically like 98%
Plus, yeah.
vaccinated, because people said, okay, I know you can't make up your mind, but here's the deal. There's going to be a mandate. If you decide that you're not going to get vaccinated, well, then you just have to get tested every week and pay for it. And they went, I'll be there. I'm back. So common sense and all that film. But other things came into play. The deployment of very soon vaccinations for children who are over the age of 5 is going to make a big difference, and it's going to change things.
Sure will.
Let's look a quick look at these two pills that came out. Okay, the Pfizer pill was the big one that the news story was about yesterday.
Yeah. So I was watching the math when this came out, and in the one study, if you didn't get the actual drug, if you
Placebo, you were part of the placebo group.
Off the placebo, 27 people went into the hospital. If you did get the Pfizer drug, only 3 did.
Right.
And so there's a 9-to-1.
Well, and the other big thing is, and I think this is really,
That's pretty amazing.
I thought this was a way to make it really make sense to me. You had the test that was ongoing, and it was scheduled to continue.
Mm-hmm.
What they were finding out was that the efficacy was so important, like as you mentioned, people going in the hospital. In all of the tests, they had different groups, age and what they were finding was that all of the people in the placebo groups had multiple folks going into the hospital and deaths.
And deaths.
Among the people who took the drug in all categories,
There were no deaths.
Yeah, small amount of people went in the hospital and there were no deaths. And so they got a special, the CDC said, hey, look, guys, we can no longer bring people into a test and then give them the placebo when we know
can't.
we can save their lives, and so
Right.
they changed that. So anyway, this is great news.
It's wonderful news.
It's called Paxlovid, an antiviral drug designed to block, and it blocks a particular enzyme that the coronavirus needs to
replicate and thrive.
And again, we've talked about this.
We have.
This isn't the only.
I'm so happy that this finally happened.
Now the good thing is that this is a product that's going to be. We talked about multiple other people doing similar things, but Pfizer can make it happen because they're, well, first of all, they got $2 billion to develop their vaccine, and
Right.
okay. The other thing is that I wasn't aware until I looked at. There's also another pill called Merck's COVID-19, and I actually have this from just a little bit. This is how does it compare? Now the difference is the Pfizer and Merck are both out there, and the big question is, well, which one works better? And it turns out that the Merck pill, which is already approved in England, is a 50%.
Right.
And that was touted as being, oh my gosh, what a game changer. This is going to be
changer,
for
yep.
the planet, and they've already started to
So
distribute it.
so Pfizer is an 89%.
Right.
It says Pfizer said on Friday, trial results showed that its pill reduced the chance of hospitalization or death by 89% in COVID-19.
Back in
Merck,
October, yeah.
on October 1st, said its pill lowered the chance of hospitalization or death by about 50%. So
Yeah.
either one, I mean, still good.
Well, I'm going to say that because as you just said in your sentence, either one would be good. My first question was, what if you took both? Would there be some synergistic improvements?
I was
that your-
about to ask the exact same thing.
You
Would
science
they work?
people, man.
Would they work as a group?
Would they be synergistically
Would
even
they-
better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, let's look for that question because
I would love to see that.
Because if they're both approved, I'm going to say, you know what? How about apply them both and see, because as terms of safety, they're both safe, but then there's always a question of could you have interactions? Anyway, but here was the thing that I thought was interesting because I don't know, to a certain extent, you and I have
I was
talked
thinking
about.
the exact same thing.
You and I
wouldn't
were-
it be cool if you took them both?
Well, the other thing I was talking about
Why
is
not?
it's in some ways it's such a shame that our medical, especially in the United States, other places people don't link. They consider medical care as something that you of course would do to make your country and your people better and all that. But in the United States, it's more like there's like a business. Yeah, it's a business model. As Libby, we have a kibitzer, a science kibitzer came by and said business model.
Are you trying to say business?
Business model.
Business model.
So I was struck by the fact that, of course, on Business Insider News, interesting. Pfizer soared 11% on strong results from while Moderna and Merck tumble.
Oh.
Now, see, I think that's. In some ways, I want to say everything isn't just a horse race. You can have, like, even if it is a horse race, you can bet on who comes in first, second, and third, and
Exactly.
you will do well.
Right.
But anyway, this is basically to say that, oh wow, Pfizer won this little horse race, and I guess that's good if you're. I know, Robert. You're just flush with Pfizer stock.
Oh,
you got the
I have
certificates.
so much.
I think I saw them stapled up on the back
Pfizer
wall.
stock,
All your
yeah.
Pfizer stock.
Yeah.
No, I don't think
In
so.
fact, it got to the point where I went, okay, so do I use toilet paper or do I use these?
Stock
Because I've got
certificates.
so much of it.
Yeah, well,
Yes,
listen,
it's
know.
like everywhere.
Yeah, I know. It
I blow my nose on
Reminds
it.
me of the Little Rascals episode where they were using it for wallpaper because they thought it wasn't important. Anyway, that's another story. Okay, so I just want to comment that in a way that's not such a good thing. Now, gosh, there's so much stuff
ECAT.
happening. There's so much stuff happening.
Get your ECAT.
There's so much stuff happening in
SK.
Infrastructure Week that I'm wondering, do they know about the ECAT test that's coming up December 9th?
I bet not
this year?
enough people do.
Well, and the thing is, you and I have made a point of saying, look, we've talked about this a lot because you and I both took physics classes. You and I study, the periodic table of the elements, and we're looking at all this stuff and interactions, and we're thinking there's a lot to this. And partly because I have to, because my brother who was in the U.S. Navy and naval intelligence and stuff, he believed in the Navy, and I was always amazed when I found out that the Naval Research, the laboratories, have been working on things similar to the ECAT, the idea of alkali metals and even the biggest deal was that between NASA and the Navy, they've actually done patents that are similar to what Rossi is doing,
Yes.
and they've actually pointed out that, as a physics person, that you were almost rolling on the floor laughing that you could just have what they called lattice confined fusion, where you jam either deuterons or hydrogen gas into a nickel lattice structure,
Right.
and you get like
Heat.
An
enormous amount of
it
heat
turns out
comes
that
off.
what they're calling lattice assisted fusion could give you confinement of, instead of like jamming stuff into I think it's like CERN and these tokamaks and things that we often talk about during our lunchtime. You got like a million times greater confinement within a lattice structure on
Yeah.
a laboratory table than you did in a giant city block, huge magnetic structure.
Amazing.
CERN, on and on. So, just saying that, even though we kind of are, I mean, I have a lot of excitement about this, and I've been following this a long time, and I've emailed Rossi personally because he actually does answer questions. There's some coming up soon. Let's click on the ECAT SK first and just see,
Okay.
because I have several different links. Okay, and this is basically what's going to be coming up. Here it is, join our event on December 9th. Now, we just have a big thing that says light up. Apparently now, Robert, we have a device here. It says it's the ECAT SK. Now, the ECAT SK is his device that produces a lot of, well, it not only produces, but it takes an amount of energy and it initiates a process that gives you more energy out.
Yes.
Now, people laugh and say, "Are you crazy?" And I
the
say,
answer is yes.
"Hey, wait a minute, watch this." And then I take out a single, one of those farmers matches that farmers use, and I, like John Wayne, I strike it on my pants, and I go,
Wow.
I say, "Look at that." I said, "Look at that flame." I says, "How do you guys feel?" And they go, "Well, I feel like you've got a match in your hand." And then I light a giant campfire.
Right.
And within just a little bit of time, everybody's like singing country roads.
So
The process.
the friction off of your pants
Well, yeah.
creates
Well, I didn't
enough
say I had pants
energy.
on.
Oh,
No, I do.
Now that's
I do.
Now that's cool.
John Wayne always wore pants when he did. He'd strike that match and light up his cigarette. Right? Okay. But your point is, I started a process that
Yes.
delivered more energy.
That delivered more.
So there's nothing
energy
crazy about
because
that thing.
Because the match
Yeah.
can create more energy once you get it started, and then the pile of leaves and sticks and twigs
The process-
that you then took
That's
the
right.
match to, it's the same concept.
Now,
Yeah.
if you're not convinced, anybody that's ever walked into a room and flipped a light switch, you can think about that one too.
No, there you
or
go.
if you started your car. And my point is, a lot of people go, "Oh, you can't get more energy out than you put in."
Well,
you're
do if you put it in the right,
not right. If you're just initiating a process.
situation.
So anyway, the ECAP in the SK stands for Sven Kullander, who was a scientist that had a lot of. He was a mentor of Rossi and the folks who have come up with this. So that's why it's called the ECAT SK, because it's after him. Then it says LED, and basically what this is about is since any energy thing, and I've heard people talk about this we can't switch our coal fire to this natural gas easily because it's always a new process of certification and yada yada. The point is that they want to have a device on the market to prove their technology and let people know that they're for real. So the first thing they've managed to get through all of the certifications, UL certification, all that, is they have taken I'm going to say watered down because it's not. It doesn't give you like 1,000 times more energy.
right.
But it's the ECAT SK that's been hooked up with LED for kind of they said, let's find one thing, and it gives you standard white light.
Right.
I think they call it the cold white spectrum. That's what they've gone after. And in fact, just to digress for a second, one of the things that people keep saying is, this is such a great thing, and we're going to talk about some of the specifics about it in a second. But they say, couldn't you make one that's just uses infrared LEDs?
Sure.
Then I could have a heater. Or the other one is all these agriculture people, like some people that are doing like vertical farming and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. They said, couldn't you just give me the make it a dedicated LED that has the light frequencies for my grow lights.
My grow lights.
I think marijuana farmers are really interested
I
there too.
think they would be, yes.
So, and Rossi's point is, well, we're going to do that, and those are all
tokamak,
those
yeah.
things are the tokamak. Rossi says all of those things will come. He said, but he said the problem is every time you make any of those changes, like if you decide that you're going to use an ECAT SK LED infrared, then it's a whole
going to
new
be brand
process.
new again. Yeah.
So anyway, let's just look at this quickly. It says ECAT SKL, simply the most energy efficient lamp ever, consumes less than 10% of any other lamp, less energy, less CO2, less money.
So this consumes less than 10% of even current LED lamps.
Yeah, and so
Wow,
so
that's really
so let's
amazing.
kind of do the read more and pre-order, because
Okay.
actually part of it is he's not going to make a bunch of these until he's got the orders for like 1 million of them. Turn on the lights, save money, help the planet. And there's his little device with the little ECAT logo on the side. It's an LED base lamp with a luminosity of a 100-watt LED lamp. Okay,
Or 700 watt standard incandescent lamp.
Right.
Yet it consumes only about 4 watts of electric power.
okay, and no, I want to stop you there because when I was at Lowe's the other day, look at it, and I thought, or no, I was actually at Kroger because they have a huge wall of LED lights now. Who would have ever thought it? We
Right.
talked about it years ago, but it was like mind-boggling. I was trying to go back and forth. Well, how bright is this compared to how much wattage
Right.
it is? And when I first saw this thing about the ECAT SK LED, I was trying to compare it to something because, frankly, if you want a really bright LED bulb like 100 watt or even a 200 watt, it only consumes 10 watts or
Right.
12. So it's not very much. So when they were talking about a 100 watt LED light, folks, I'm telling you that a 100 watt LED lamp is what you see if you go to your local football stadium.
Yeah.
And you look up
It's
and
a
they
very
have,
bright
or
light.
like at the airport, they're so bright you're
Yeah.
going, oh my gosh. But the point is, because the SKLED is producing, it's doing the same thing that one of these 100 watt bulbs, which is like it would give you sunburn.
Yeah.
Like they're huge and they're really bright.
And it consumes only 4 watts
It's
of electric
only
power.
4 watts. And as I recall being at Kroger looking at, if you get a 4 watt, that's going to be like a 40 watt. It's going to be comparable to a 40
Yeah.
watt incandescent, which is like nothing.
Right.
So the point is, this thing is really huge.
Wow.
A couple just quick points. It says using the SK LED instead of a standard LED lamp, you will save on average, reduce CO2 emissions by 1 kilogram every 24 hours. That's not insignificant.
That's astounding.
Then they say electric lamps.
So wait. Where is that?
It's
Is
down
that
the middle.
third?
In fact, it's where it says in fact.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, in fact, using the standard, like you will average reduce CO2. Okay, 1 kilogram. Okay, so I now have something to go to the people in Wheeling and talk about their ugly lighting, and I can say this is how much carbon dioxide you can reduce every 24 hours by using this as a standard.
As opposed
Okay, thank you.
to just saying I don't like your ugly lights. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that might
which
work.
I have over and over again.
Now, the reason
They
why-
equate it to money.
Yeah.
That's what they're gonna say.
Well, the reason why it's also
Okay.
important is because they point out that, and in that last sentence, it doesn't even talk about the fact that we're not comparing the ECAT SK LED to, quartz, or halide or incandescent. We're comparing them to other LEDs, which has already made people go, oh God, this is great, I'm saving money. But it points out that electric lamps consume about 20% of the world's electricity, and many of those lamps consume much more energy than even standard LED lamps. So by replacing existing lamps with the ECAT SK LED, we reduce the world's electricity consumption by up to almost 20%. That's astonishing, really. Anyway, but here's the thing. So you're thinking, okay, I've got this light that's like a stadium lamp. I
Right.
could probably tan myself in front of it if there's enough, enough of the right ultraviolets and stuff. But basically, they're selling these things for $25 a piece.
Right.
So anyway, the point is, you can come down here and pre-order, and then here people say, oh yeah, Rossi's he's trying to get people to send. No, nobody sends in any money for any of this.
Right.
But You can pre-order, and actually,
can pre-order.
I am actually probably going to pre-order some because anyway. Now it points out the ECAT SK LED will be presented at an online event on December 9th, and it will at that point it will be certified for safety and performance. And I think since it has been, I was looking on the blog. Let me go back to that was about the light itself, and that's what's going to be in the demo. So let's go up to the thing where it says read more about the January or the December 9th event. Join our online event December 9th, 2020. We will hold an online event presenting the ECAT SK LED, the most efficient, yada, yada, yada. And here's the other thing. They're also going to show, because they say that in terms of sale for home use, the thing that you and I are waiting for,
Yes.
the ECAT SKL as a freestanding unit, because a lot of people have said, hey, I appreciate that you're going to give me a light that will just scorch the paint off my car if I put it in the garage. But how about
But I
if
just want a normal
I just want
light.
electricity? Or no,
Right.
they said, I just want a generator.
Right, sure.
So the thing that's going to be happening is the ECAT SKL itself is also going to be shown as an ongoing R&D project. But apparently, and we could look at the Rossi blog, they're talking about the fact that it will have its certification complete probably, sometime early 2022, and they're going to start taking pre-orders for that.
I want that.
Well, I'm going to be
I want
pre-ordering
that.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, then there's a little thing where you can take a survey. Do you want to join us for the online event? This is the company that puts on the,
Sure.
because they're trying to get a sense of how many computers they're going to need. And if only 15 people in Wheeling, West Virginia want to watch it, that's one thing. Yes, I'll be there for the presentation. Yes, for
I
the
will
presentation.
say that too, yes.
Well, yes, for the presentation and Q&A session. So they're going to be all the questions that everybody has said, well, what about this? They're
All
going to
right,
have a
I
whole...
will do that.
I'm going to do that one.
Okay.
And then I'm just going to vote, and then,
I will vote. Okay.
So the point is, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get it set up so they, so that, they're going to send you in, information on how to watch this will be available. And mine's probably jammed up here, the poll maker things. I don't know.
It says 333 votes in 14 days, created 24th of October. Click next for poll results.
No, okay.
So it looks like, 19% said yes for the presentation only. 73% said yes for the presentation and the Q&A.
Yeah.
2% said no. 7% said maybe. That's interesting, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, I'm going to definitely see it, because part of what there's also, if you read through this, and I don't want to spend all the time talking about this because a lot of people go, you guys have been talking about this and we're waiting for something to
Right.
happen. Well, that's fine. I'm with you. We all need to make sure that, we're going to get the right information, and nobody wants to push you into believing anything if you don't have the facts in front of you.
Right, and that's why
This-
we want to watch it live.
Well, and I'm going to just say that this is important stuff. Now, I have a link for the demo, but we don't need to do that. Let's take a quick look at, this is the ResearchGate. This is kind of the theoretical background for what this device is. If you are deep into physics, as maybe Robert and I might be, I'm just saying, we think this stuff is kind of important.
ResearchGate.
ResearchGate, and mine comes up on Safari. Is yours working on? You're on Safari too, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, this is the theoretical background, which was originally published in January of 2019, but Rossi it's been updated, and that's one of the things that he mentions, and it's called the ECAT SK and long-range particle interactions. So for most people, I just want to know that if this thing is going to be something I plug into the wall and it gets a little bit of electricity out of my wall plug,
Right.
but gives me a whole bunch more in the form of heat, or basically the SK by itself will give you electricity.
Right.
And there could be some heat, but for the most part, it would just be like, hey dudes, plug this into your wall or to put it wherever you have the power going into it. It goes through the whole abstract, and
So, I know we bounce this around, but has Rossi and the electric car people gotten together?
oh, they're all talk. There's talk.
All right, because this makes so much sense for an electric car.
Oh, well, it makes so much sense for so many things. Most people, even though the SK LED light is a great bargain, if it all works as it says, that's
Yeah.
a wonderful thing.
Right.
It's actually going to operate on a COP, a coefficient of power, not a huge thing.
Yeah.
And when people say, oh, okay, great, You said COP. Does that relate to the climate thing? No, that's a different thing. COP in this context is the coefficient of power. If I take 1 watt of energy and I put it into your device, Robert, and you give me 100 units back out, and I go, what the? Whatever else might be going on, I can say that the coefficient of power or performance
is 100.
was 100.
Yes.
Okay. So now I'm going to say that if you're not a physics person, there's a bunch of this, or you may be, if you're a science fiction person, a bunch of it will go, well, this makes sense to me.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick look at just the abstract and then the conclusions. The abstract is, it says, these are some of the theoretical frameworks to explore why the ECAT works. And what they're saying is that we're forming dense exotic electron clusters, which he says are present. And it's talking about Casimir forces, Aronoff-Bohm, and these people are going, who are these guys? There's a lot here that's deep in the weeds. They talk about even zero, like vacuum polarization and on and on and on. But I'll tell you what, let's scroll down through the, okay. When it pops up, the first thing that you will notice if you were a non-physics person, or even if you are a physics person, there's a bunch of, so first there's a couple simple little, here's one. This is gold 197 plus nitrogen 14 equals gold 198 plus nitrogen 13. You're going, so Robert, this is weird. This is like it's not transmutation, but
well, it is, because
isotope change.
You're right.
I think you and I have called it this.
Isotopic change.
Yeah, and we actually, Robert
It's
and
an
I,
isotopic-
for whoever would,
Hence, affirmation is what it is.
yeah, so for anybody who would really care, Robert and I have basically said, and I've said this to Rossi, why don't you call it isotopic change energy, ICE, related to what people, it's not cold fusion. He doesn't say that at all. Everybody understands that you can have isotopic change. I mean, that's not complicated. So it starts off, that's the first little thing you see is, oh, okay, well, I get that. And then it has some number. You're going, okay, what's this? I'm not sure. Charge clusters. There's some equations that if you're not a physics person, it'll take you a while to figure them out. If you are, you might just be giddy with laughter and enjoy all this. You've got lambdas and you've got F sub C's, and it's really complex. But let's scroll. I want to scroll all the way down. There's a lot to read here. And please don't let me dismay you here's an explanation of Darwin Lagrangian,
Just in case you don't have enough math.
Well, and I'm just saying that there's so much of it that there's explanations of all the things he's talking about. Then he goes down through it. But I want to get all the way to the very conclusions. Because a lot of these things, the other thing I will say is this particular article on ResearchGate is one of the most highly read. I mean, there are great things about picometric aggregates where they're talking about things that are, like maybe even temporary aggregations of electrons or other particles. Here's the evaluation of evaluation of performance, and it goes on to say how they evaluated it, power emission, average energy produced, and yada, yada, yada. But the part that I had not seen before that I thought was kind of interesting was this little thing that says, hey, this is, if you were a physicist, you might say, well, this is a little too loose for me, but they wanted to make it clear. In a laboratory, an industrial laboratory in the state of Tennessee, to keep a room warm, 3,000 square feet, height of 15 feet, and they're talking about the temperature outside. You have to take into consideration. Okay, so what was the insulation and all that? But the point was they wanted to keep the temperature, which they typically used a 2000, 20 to 22 kilowatt heater. That's the electrical heater. So they go through all the change in temperature. The air. It's got all the stuff. The bottom line is that they said we're able to compute the average coefficient of performance, that's what COP stands for, as the ratio of output and input energies. And so if you go, I'm not going to ask you to believe anything, but their point is that in that system, they were saying that their coefficient of power was 54.
54.
Okay.
That's pretty impressive.
It is very impressive. And then it goes through their conclusions. They talk about all these different theories and stuff, but the consequence of these relatively long-range interactions, The possible formation of dense aggregates at picometric scale has been proposed. So when people say, well, do they have any kind of theory for how this works? It's based on this. The
Yes.
idea of the production of these, it says an ECAT plasma, and here's part of their evidence, an ECAT plasma spectral signature, isotopic dependent, so depending on the isotopes, the visible range of proton electron picometric structure has been reported. So they have evidence from analyzing the spectrum of the plasma that they're getting, that this thing shows up, and they're going, well, this would explain it.
So for the various folks out there that are going, what's a
Picometric.
picometric? A pico is a metric prefix meaning 10 to the minus 12.
Yeah, so we're talking
All right.
way smaller.
So we're talking 1,000 times larger than a proton,
Right.
and 100 times smaller than an atom. Somewhere in there.
Yeah, so we're talking
Okay.
about way at the very small
Yes.
scale of our
Very
universe.
small.
These
Yes.
things are happening, but
There seem to be things happening at that.
and
level.
again, because
That's fascinating.
well, being not too deep in the weeds about it is kind of better for people to maybe understand, because sometimes you just glaze over when people talk about things that are just so complex, and even it's a different language, the physics of it.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the things that a lot of people have said, oh yeah, you people and your cold fusion, and that's never going to happen. Rossi has basically made the point, he does not consider this as a process that, first of all, is outside of normal physics at all.
No.
And he also says it's frankly not cold. It's not cold fusion.
No,
And
it
now it may
is-
be related to what Fleischmann and Pons were doing, because they were using metals and they were using
Yeah.
deuterons and they were using hydrogen and deuterium. But the point is, he's saying, look, when people finally understand this, it's going to be like, oh yeah, it's like a steam engine when you do this, and it's going to change everything.
Yeah.
It's going to change so many things
It's
that
so
it's
fascinating.
almost scary. So
And I just wanted to say that at every age, at every time scale, when you're talking about the now, you think this is it.
Why?
But no, this is the next step in a infinite number of steps that human beings are going to find throughout the realm of looking at atoms and molecules and subatomic particles. We're finding something new,
well,
and that's what is.
And the other thing
going
is,
on here.
science finds something that happens, and a lot of people go, well, but you can't explain why it happens, so, come back when you can. And a big part of what has to be understood in all of these, I'm going to say what people would sometimes think, these are crazy new energy concepts. Like, what are you talking about, perpetual motion?
No,
you're talking
no, it's
about,
not.
and you're talking about things that can be defined in terms of an actual mechanism.
Right.
And they propose several things here, because they may actually know, but maybe they're trying to confuse people, like, well, go down this rabbit hole, but we
Right.
already know. So December 9th, they're going to be demonstrating the thing, and basically the thing that I think is cool about it is there's a question and answer. You can also, you can submit if you think that, oh, I'm going to really nail you because you can't answer this question, they're saying, please submit it.
Let's do it.
Let's get, and
Well,
I'll say,
and-
before we move on, let me click on the Rossi blog up there above our,
Sure.
just to see what, it's kind of fun to see. There are questions about it. He says, first, I'm just looking at the first thing that's on here this morning. Do I understand correctly that according to the theory, neither the SKL or the SKLED needs to be refilled, but the durability of the components does not allow unlimited operation? He goes, yeah. So they're basically saying that for the lifetime of, they're proposing that the SKLED has like a lifetime of 100,000 hours.
Wow.
And they're basically saying it's designed to, in terms of the fueling of it, that's like nothing. It's going to be the other components that's going to go on. So anyway, you can scroll down through this and ask, I mean, there's so many, it's an interesting thing to do. And if you want to, you can put your question up here.
Right.
You may think, I can never, well, it's like some people say, I can never get the information out of these people. Or in fact, somebody told me the other day that, Biden never answers questions. And I thought, what? But Rossi answers questions.
Rossi
so maybe
does.
you could be.
Yes, he does.
All right, we're going to leave that, and I'm going to say, folks, listen, if you are at least mildly interested in this, if you're a physics person, if you're an energy person, if
And
you
you're just interested.
and you think that this, and Rossi has also said, hey, this isn't going to replace everything because there's a place for all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
This is another tool, but most people who have really looked at this understand it's going to be, if not a black swan event, in the fact that everybody's going to go, oh, wait a minute. So in some ways, this is going to hurt the solar energy.
No.
And Rossi points out, I mean, part of what he's doing is he can take his device and produce an immense amount of light from a small amount of electricity. Okay, let's just pretend that if you have a solar panel that can produce 25% electricity from the light that hits it. So you're working on a minus, like when you talk about your coefficient of performance, it's 0.25, it's
Right.
1/4.
Right.
So you know that if somehow somebody could bring you a device that you could put in 1 unit of energy and get 8 units of energy out, you could now produce electricity at double the rate that you did from using sunlight. So you're going to go, well, wait a minute, I'll just I'll get these SK LEDs and put them in my in a big room with all my solar panels, and I'll have a net 4 times more electricity. Okay.
And it will work at not a night.
And so I'm saying
that's interesting.
all these things are possible. All right. So what I know we probably went on way too long, like with about 5
That's
minutes,
okay.
5 minutes left to cover all these topics: wildfires, ice melt, troposphere, webs, space scopes, fungus. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you because Robert, I found this story such an egregious story.
The fungus.
I want to go to the fungus. I was thinking
All right.
the
I was
worst.
thinking fungus too.
The worst thing that the thing about fungus is now, first of all, people go, we have to outthink the COVID. Like you're going to outthink fungus.
You're not going to outthink
First of
a
all,
virus.
the reason why
Viruses don't think.
the reason why you can't outthink a virus or a fungus is because you're playing the wrong game. They
That's right.
don't even think.
They don't think.
But I thought that when I saw this, I said, this is just cruel
This is
beyond
a
belief.
fungus that uses chemicals to trick male flies into mating with infected dead females.
Now that could be a
Now
movie.
that's just disturbed.
Now that could be a movie coming out somewhere for next Halloween. But when I saw that, I thought to myself, I mean, I don't love flies particularly when they bother me, but I appreciate like that they're out there. Sometimes insects and flies that are mosquitoes. These things they have a place and all that. But really, and they're not the smartest.
No, they are not the
They
smartest.
are not the smartest things. Like I know somebody that's once pointed out to me that if you're swatting flies to kill them, which I will never do, because I figure live and let live, or as James Bond would say, live and let
die.
But the point was made to me that flies aren't very smart. That instead of trying to hit the fly, just pretend that you're going to smack a fly that's like 2 inches behind the fly.
Oh.
And it turns out because they always kind of take off backwards
Oh.
to evade. People always think they're going to take off forward, but no, they develop. Anyway. So this is so crazy. Not that we want you to look at pictures of flies mating, but or even a live fly mating with a
Dead
dead
flies
fly.
mating.
But this particular thing shows the amazing mechanisms that, say, a fungus or something that you consider. And I'll give you one of the prior research shows that there are some type of fungus that literally give the insects that are affected by them something known as summit disease, in which a victim's nervous system is infected and the unwilling creature begins climbing to the highest vantage
I've
point.
heard about this.
And is once there, the wings are spread wide, and the victim begins spewing
Spewing
spores.
spores, which makes perfect sense.
So, in the great scheme of things evolving and mechanisms, over the years, you've got this fungus that is capable of causing all kinds of crazy things.
And the reason is
Survival.
that it's evolution.
Yeah.
That's all.
So
that it is.
knowing that, it says.
How fascinating.
So anyway, basically they went through and they did this whole thing, and it says in their lab the researchers captured a host of infected and non-infected flies. Males were given the choice of mating with either an infected or non-infected female, and more than often they chose the one that was infected. And so it basically suggested the fungus is doing something to make the infected female more attractive. And it turns out that there were these, sesquiterpenes, certain chemicals, like if you think of pheromones and things.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say, this is just insidious but successful.
Are you about ready?
We've got, I've got about 15 seconds left here. I think I can start mine. I'm going to see if it's ready to go. Oh, mine's going to go.
Try yours.
So when we hit 59.
Okay.
So anyway, it says the researchers found instances of unusual volatile compounds which are not normally associated with houseflies, but have been found to sexually attract many types of insects to the situation. So, man, I'll tell you, if these fungi are not intelligent, but evolution creates amazingly
It turns
elegant
out that
situations.
that when by sheer chance a myriad of chemicals are made, the ones that work to the benefit of the fungus are the ones that keep going back into the loop.
Success.
Yeah.
Success
Fascinating.
breeds survival, I guess.
It
is the
does.
case.
That's exactly
And
what happens.
in a random, I don't want to say a totally random
No,
universe,
I mean,
random events,
It's not totally random.
random events over a period of time and other random components create amazingly elegant and sometimes really creepy things.
Yeah.